The new budget approved by state lawmakers last week includes tens of millions of dollars in new funding for more qualified lawyers to represent defendants who can't afford one.
Now, prosecutors are pushing back, saying the state is tipping the scales too far in favor of accused criminals. Joining us now to hash this all out are Ann Arbor defense attorney Johns Shea and Macomb County prosecutor Peter Lucido. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight. John, let's start with you. Does more money need to be poured into this for better public defenders, and why?
Well, when you consider that Michigan ranked sixth from the bottom in funding of the indigent defense function in an NLADA study back in 2008, and we've only started funding the system more adequately since FY 2019, yes, the state needs to continue putting additional funds into the defense function, indigent defense function, because it's been neglected for so long, 150 years. Michigan actually was one of the first states in the Union back in 1857 to require by statute appointed counsel in felony cases. But they devolved it to the counties, and counties didn't have much incentive to fund it, and so it's sort of languished for quite a long time. In the meantime, the law enforcement function was resourced much more robustly.
Will this make it easier for prosecutors, Peter, or not with the increased funding?
No. For many years, over 35 years that I've been in practice, I've done nothing but criminal defense before I became a prosecutor. And I also was a public defender. And I know what those inadequacies, or let's say lack of funding, was back then. You couldn't get experts, you couldn't get investigators, and you did get prejudiced in your rights to properly defend. You have a constitutional right to a lawyer, but there was no extension to those other things. And to the point is this. In 2019, barely 4 years ago, the Indigent Defense Commission looked at those inadequacies and funded a total of $87 million. But in 2023, they added $172 million, and plus an additional $72 million. I want to know during COVID how we've even spent that money when the courts were closed. And in addition, I also want to know, now that they have this money, did they have a blueprint on how it's going to be spent, and having the ability to have the prosecution have a level playing field. Let's face it, we're getting there, but without accountability and oversight, I think the horses are going ahead and running afoul. The reason why is we have more prosecutions than we do to have the Indigent Defense Counsel, to have lawyers. The reason why is some people get their own private lawyer. That's just the way life is. Some that get the lawyer from that is appointed to them also gets with it those investigators now, expert witnesses and everything that we couldn't get before. But if we have more on our plate to prosecute and we're ministers of justice, we have an equal balance that we have to perform, which is those that are victims, we've got to get their cases through the system. Otherwise, that victim is waiting for justice to be had. And if the Indigent Defense Counsel takes all the money, we don't have any money to prosecute properly.
Could this lead, though, to fewer wrongful convictions? I mean, for example, you look at the case with Kenneth Nixon, the Detroit man that spent 16 years in prison, and now he's claiming and suing Detroit Police Department, claiming that he was framed. Could having a better lawyer, perhaps appointed to a situation like that, lead to fewer wrongful convictions?
Absolutely. Having somebody with more knowledge and skill always will lead to a better defense. Those that have used to get better representation than those that had not. The reality is this: our Constitution went as far as saying that you have a right, when your liberty is at stake, to a appointed attorney or to an attorney. It didn't say of what caliber or quality. And as a result, I submit that the Indigent Defense Counsel is a great start as it relates to looking at the problem, but we need to do oversight. We need to find out how that money's being spent, because we don't want to waste that spending of the taxpayers and then learn later on that we didn't do what we needed to do. So we should put some parameters together, but I was a part of that in the legislature, and I did believe, because of the amount of years of being a criminal defense attorney and what was called working for the poor, having the ability to go forward and said, let's put some money there, because I remember the judge saying, I deny your motion, we just don't have any money.
John, do you have a response?
Yeah, I do. And Pete was in the legislature. We had discussions about this back when the Indigent Defense Act was enacted. The problem, the reason that the funding has gone up in every year since 2019 is because our primary job as an Indigent Defense Commission is to enact standards. Standards cost money. The last two standards that were approved by LARA, they're recommended by the Indigent Defense Commission, but were in the state agency called LARA. The last two they approved cost a bunch of money, including a compensation standard. So you're seeing increases in funding every year because the standards that are being approved and that local funding units have to meet require more money, and that money is coming from the state. This is not a zero-sum game. Prosecutors' offices are funded by counties. The indigent defense system is funded by the state, and it's not like if you start taking money away, we're still catching up. We're still underfunded. If you start taking away money from the indigent defense system, it's not like it's going dollar for dollar into the prosecutor's office's coffers. It's not. We don't quarrel with prosecutors and their quest to be properly resourced as well. If they're not properly resourced, then they should be properly resourced. As a matter of fact, we've said that publicly when we promulgated standards. We want the entire system to be efficient and effective, not just the defense side. But robbing the indigent defense system in order to make prosecutors happy is not a way to get to a fully functioning system. Sinking one boat or bringing down one boat is not going to uplift another. And to the extent they're short on resources, they should advocate for getting better resourced.
Right. And we are getting the wrap. We have to close, but I know you have something to say, Peter.
Just to close it out, John, and to the viewers out there, we don't want to see an injustice. We actually want to see a justice, because that's what we're supposed to be. They're sign the warrants, win them fairly, lose them squarely. But we also want accountability. And if the Indigent Defense Council didn't have cases that when the courtrooms were open, then we should go ahead and seek the justice that it deserves and see where that money was spent and how we can go ahead and do things more economically.
It sounds like both sides could use more money. All right, thank you to both Ann Arbor Defense Attorney John Shea and Macomb County Prosecutor Peter Lucido for joining us tonight.
Thank you.